When Columbus Day was established, few Italian Americans would have realized that Columbus was a bad guy, and that his actions directly caused the murder, rape, and enslavement of countless indigenous people. Many people did not think about the fact that Columbus could not have discovered places that were already inhabited by millions of human beings. But now we all know better. We can't pretend we don't. Our families came here as immigrants, ultimately causing Native Americans to be thrown off their lands and killed, whether we meant for that to happen or not. The very real hardships and prejudice that our families endured as immigrants do not compare to the ongoing genocide of Native Americans. We are now part of every institution in this country, while the Native people continue to be treated as outcasts on their own land. In the past, Italian immigrants largely understood that they needed to be in solidarity with others, whether it was the heroic women who led sweatshop strikes or Sacco and Vanzetti. Today, many Italian Americans continue that progressive tradition and support social and economic justice and the rights of newly arrived immigrants. It's time for us to say goodbye to Columbus and instead embrace the proud history of the Italian American workers, artists, teachers, writers, scientists, and others whom we can celebrate in good conscience. We have to stop ignoring Native people when they speak out about the past and the suffering that they continue to endure. We owe Native Americans an apology for the immense harm that we have done to them, and we need to repair our relationship with them. A first step in doing that is to honor their request that we commemorate Indigenous Peoples Day on the second Monday in October.
I am Italian American and I support Native Americans and Indigenous Peoples Day.
Columbus came to this continent purely by mistake, first of all, and he led the way to it being rampaged and pillaged by Europeans when there were thousands of people living here, in fact millions, taking care of this continent for thousands of years. So their suffering and their heritage should be recognized, not Columbus.
Some Italian Americans say that you can't judge a 15th century man by 21st century standards, but I have news for you. Genocide has always been a crime.
3 of my 4 grandparents were Italian. They came to the United States in between 1900 and 1915. They knew how important it was to have a day that represented the pride of the Italian people, Italian Americans. In fact, my father's father was nearly lynched by the Ku Klux Klan, partly because he was Italian and partly because he was a labor organizer. But we didn't want, and none of us would have wanted, to have a day that was a slap in the face to the indigenous people of this continent. So I'd say that it is really important for Italian Americans today to reconsider using a Columbus Day, a day that insults the native people, the indigenous people of this continent, as a day to honor Italians. We can find somebody better than Columbus to represent us.
Support Indigenous Peoples Day in October.
We don't need Columbus Day to celebrate our culture. Our country still exists, our language still exists. Whereas for Indigenous people, many of their languages and beautiful cultures have been destroyed and their territories drastically reduced.
Native Americans have been fighting for this for years. It's about time that Italian Americans listen to them and support them.